Now let's understand the classification of cloning. We have two types of cloning. One is known as shallow cloning, another is known as deep cloning. Let's learn them one by one. First, shallow cloning. What is shallow cloning? Let's suppose you have a class A and you are having one object of class A, that is A1. Now you want to create another object of class A, that is A2, and you want to do it using cloning. Okay. Now if you use cloning, cloning will simply copy all the values of class A and paste them and use them as it is into A2 object. Okay. Now in this case, let's suppose class A is also holding the reference of some other class, class B. In class A, there is one instance data member of class B type declared there. Okay. And now you create the copy of class A object, which is A1 into A2. If you try to do it directly, then what is going to be happen? It will not only copy all the primitive type of values, but it will also copy the reference, which is of B class type declared in class A. It will also copy that reference as well into A2 object. Means it just directly copy the references into your A2 object. And when you copy the references, then sometimes it creates complications. Let's better understand this with real-time example. Let's see this. I have a class here, which is school class holding school name and director name and a toString overridden method here. Okay. Now I have another class, which is student class, and it is basically implementing clonable interface. It is holding student name and roll number properties. Along with these primitive type of properties, it is also holding a class type of property, which is of school type of reference. Okay. Then I'm initializing all these three properties using the constructor. Then I'm overriding clone method here, and then I'm overriding toString method as well. Okay. Now what is going to be happen when I'm creating school object with some value? Let's suppose school name I'm initializing, but director name I'm not initializing. That means that will be by default null type. Now this school object reference I am passing to create student object. Okay. Now student 1 is holding Tom as registration number 45 and school object. Let's say school object reference is 1000. 1000 we are assuming is the reference or the address of the school object. Okay. Now when we will ask to create the clone of student 1, what is going to be happen? It is not only going to copy the values Tom and 45, but it will also copy the object reference, which is 1000. Okay. That means student 2 will also contain the same object reference for school object. That means school object is now shared between both of the student objects. And if we will print student 1 and student 2 object, you can see I am getting same values for both of the object, but also I am getting the same school objects here, right? You might be thinking that, yeah, we are doing good. We are having the same values, but the problem is we are actually sharing the same school object reference between both of these student objects, which is 1000, which can give us sometimes trouble. For example, let's suppose I want to update the school name for student 1. So what I am doing, I am saying student 1 dot school to access the school reference, which is 1000, and then I am updating the school name from DAV school to DPS. Okay. And then I am printing the school name or entire student 1 object. Okay. Now what is going to be happen when you are updating the school name in 1000 object reference? The same reference is also shared with the student 2 object. That means this school name is also update for the student 2 object as well. If you run this, you can see this school name DPS is now updated for student 2 object as well, which is wrong. When I am updating school name for first object, it should be changed for first object only. It should not make any impact on second object. And this is happening because we are basically copying the object reference into my second object. That's the problem. And that is known as shallow cloning. Shallow cloning is just directly copying everything. Even if my class is holding references, those references will also get copied. And in that case, this problem will occur. And that is nothing but known as shallow cloning. Now, to overcome this shallow cloning problem, we can use deep cloning concept. Okay, always remember shallow cloning will never gives you any trouble when you are just copying the primitive type of values. Okay, if your class for which you want to create the clone, that class is only holding primitive type of properties, you can go with simple cloning concept, which is shallow cloning. But in case if your class is holding some non-primitive type of values, some class type of references, then you have to switch into deep cloning concept. Okay, now let's see how we can resolve this by using deep cloning. We don't need to touch anything, we just have to make changes in my clone method. What I need to do is simply, first of all, for the school reference also I need to create a clone method. I have to implement clonable interface there as well and have to override clone method. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are not going to take the copy of the same school object. Instead of that, we will create the another object of school class object. Okay, now you can see here I'm also making changes in the logic of student class clone method. Here what I am doing, I was last time I was directly returning this clone of my student class object. But now what I am doing, I am first creating the clone of student class object and getting the student object. And then here I am saying that this dot school means my current class object school. I want to create the clone for that school object. Okay, means the same values will be cloned into another school object and I'm getting another school object. And then I'm passing this newly created school object into my newly created student object school reference. Okay, so let's suppose if I created another school object which is of 2000 reference, I am passing this 2000 reference as a school object into my newly created or cloned student object school. Okay, so now what is going to be happen, we are first creating school object here with 1000 reference, let's suppose, and then we are creating another student object, first student object first of all we are creating with that same object reference 1000. And when we are creating the clone for student one object, what it does, it will first create the clone of student object and then it will create the school clone, and that school clone it will pass to the newly created student object, and then that newly created or newly cloned student object reference it is returning back to me here into student 2, and then I am accessing that. So student 1 is holding different school object reference this time and student 2 is holding different school object reference this time. Okay, now, if I will make changes into first school object reference, that will not make any impact on student 2 object school reference. Okay, because both school references are different in both of the student objects. Let me run this. You can see for first object, the school name get changed, but for second object, school name is still the same. This is how deep cloning works. So we are done with the shallow cloning and deep cloning and their differences. And this is very repeatedly asked interview question. They will ask you what is the difference between both of them, when to go with which one. Please prepare this as good as possible.